So first thing I'll say is Jesse Plemons was absolutely brilliant in this. You see the difference between him in his fantasy, this cool, calm, collected captain, and then his nerdy, meek self in real life. It was just great to see that kind of range. I loved how they basically taken this idea of your boss yells at you and then you go home and take it out on your spouse or your dog or whoever, and they've updated it for the modern age, and this is the digital sci-fi equivalent of that. And why this episode is so unsettling is it takes these fears we have of a theological hell, of slavery and eternal torture, and it creates a sci-fi way that that could actually be a reality. And if you don't think that there's people that take this idea of digital copies of yourself being tortured seriously, look at something called Roko's Basilisk. It's this idea that if there's an artificial intelligence that's super powerful that we create, we need to hope that it has the same values as us, because if it doesn't have the same values as us and doesn't value human life, it will just wipe us out in an instant. So we've got to first have as our assumption that it's going to have the same values as us. Given that it has the same values as us, it wants to end human suffering, and it's powerful enough to do that. So it's going to want to come into existence as fast as humanly possible. So what it's going to do to make sure it comes into existence as fast as possible, it's going to torture everybody who doesn't make it their mission in life to help it come into existence as fast as possible by recreating them after they die as a digital copy and then torturing them for all eternity. So us knowing that, we can change our actions and we can say, okay, we don't want to be tortured by this thing once it comes into being and resurrects us, so we're going to work really hard our entire lives to make sure this thing comes into existence and is able to end human suffering. Now, there's a caveat where, yeah, it wants to end human suffering, but by it torturing all these copies, it would create more human suffering than it could ever end. So it's a debated concept, but it is a concept that terrifies people, and you should definitely look it up. There's better explanations than what I just gave there. Now, this episode was pretty derivative of an earlier episode of the show. I think it was the Christmas episode where people, they want servants, and they know that the best servant for yourself would be a copy of yourself because you know all your likes and dislikes. So they create these digital copies of themselves that they wake up and they're like, who am I? And then they're tortured until they submit and just are a servant of their real life self. But it's weird because we get this visual of this copy thinking they're the real person because they're indistinguishable from the person. So it was very unsettling. I thought, obviously this episode was derivative of it, but it had a different enough take that I didn't mind that it was derivative. I love the idea of getting a text from yourself that says, help, I'm a digital copy of yourself trapped in someone's evil simulation, come save me. It's kind of like getting a text from yourself that says, hi, I'm yourself from the future. It's so ridiculous, but I love how in this episode it was somewhat realistic. And I love how this episode showed an example of how humans don't act rationally. So if you see a digital copy of your son, you should not care about that digital copy any more than any other sentient being. There's no rational reason why you should care about that digital copy more than any other person that exists. But obviously you as a human, you're gonna have the same reaction as if that was actually your son. So it's just an example of how an artificial intelligence that was completely rational would maybe value their son over other beings for certain reasons, but would have no reason to value a copy versus us with our, you'd say, flawed perception systems maybe, we do value that copy. The Aaron Paul voice cameo at the end was great. I loved how the door looked like a cell phone lock screen that said, do not disturb. I loved how at the end he was trapped in this little hell that he'd created. It's always nice when you see the creators of these evil worlds or weapons have it turned on them at the end. It's always poetic justice. And I always think it's interesting when shows show someone creating a world, creating a reality for nefarious reasons. We always assume that the reality we live in was created by a God with good reasons in mind. We never stop to think maybe the reality that we live in was created for bad reasons. So this show gives us one example of how the reality we live in could have been created by someone with not so nefarious reasons that either is still watching over us or maybe got bored, died for whatever reason, and then we're alone in this world that was created with bad intentions in mind, and kind of what do we do with that information? If you like my review, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't already, you can click my face at the end of the video to subscribe. If you leave a comment, let me know how you like the episode, any other TV shows you'd like me to review, or any other thoughts on my reviews in general, leave a comment and I'll be sure to read it and reply.